Hey everyone, and welcome to my June reading wrap up. I'm filming this a few days before the end of June, so it is quite possible that I will finish another book before the end of the month, but I have some time to film now, so I thought I would crack on with it. If you've been following my wrap-ups, you'll know I had some kind of crappy reading months. I wasn't reading a lot, I wasn't reading things I was absolutely loving, but June was a total turnaround. I think June has maybe been the best reading month that I've had all year. If you want to know about how my reading has gone for the past 6 months, I will be doing a reading statistics kind of video, goals and statistics, that kind of thing. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Anyway, I'm going to crack on with all of the books that I read in June. In June, I read Model Misfit, which is the second book in the Geek Girl series. I read the first book in the Geek Girl series, I don't know if it was like a year ago or 2 years ago, just after I'd finished my exams. And I remember it being just such an easy read that was really good for me mentally because it wasn't using a lot of brain power. It was just a really pleasant, easy read, and the second book was no different. I was right back in Harriet's world and had a great time on her journey. So if you don't know anything about the Geek Girl series, this is a middle grade stroke YA, I'd say probably on the younger side of YA series about a girl named Harriet Manners who is your stereotypical geek, and the books are littered with these little facts that she has learned. In the first book, she is taken on by a modelling agency and it follows how her world is transformed by that. In the second book, we follow her going to Japan, the various antics that her career gets her into there, how she struggles with her romantic relationships, and I found most interestingly how the dynamic in her family is changing. What I loved about the first book, and it's what I love about the second book, is her relationship with her parents, her father and her stepmother. In this book, her stepmother is pregnant, and we look at how Harriet comes to terms with that shifting dynamic. I love books that have to do with familial relationships, and this book was just timed perfectly for me. I definitely don't want to leave as big of a gap between reading the second and third book as I did with the first and second book, so I think I might even pick that one up in July. I also read a children's book, and that was Goodnight Mr. Tom by Michelle Megorian. I hope I pronounced her last name correctly. I borrowed this from my boyfriend because we were in his house and he was showing me his childhood books, and I was like, I want to read this one, and his name is written on the front page in really bad handwriting and it's just really cute. And I've never read this book before, so I thought I would pick it up, and I absolutely flew through it. The story is set on the breakout of the Second World War, and it follows a young boy named William Beach who is evacuated to the countryside to stay with an elderly man named Mr. Tom, or as other people call him, Tom Oakley. Again, in this book, we are looking at family relationships. We are looking at the growing relationship between these two characters. We are also looking at the abusive relationship that Will has with his birth mother. The relationship that develops between Will and Tom is absolutely beautiful, and I loved it so much. There's one moment in the book where there's some language used that didn't need to be there. There's a couple sentences where the characters feel the need to comment on how black a white character looks after a tan and use certain language in that section of the novel. That just didn't need to be there. But overall, I thought this was a fantastic book. There's one character called Carrie who I think she's incredible. I love Carrie. Carrie is such a little feminist and a little campaigner for equal education for girls. I also picked up Nadia Hussein's The Secret Life of the Amir Sisters, and I believe this was written with the help of Aisha Malik, who you will know for the Sophia Khan series. I don't know how much experience Nadia from the Great British Bake Off actually has in writing fiction, but if it's something like she came up with the idea and Aisha helped her to craft the book, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. I absolutely loved this book. This looks at 3 sisters in the Amir family, as the title will probably tell you. The 4 sisters lead very different lives. We have one who is very much your strong, independent woman. We have one who is coming to terms with some secrets that her husband has kept from her, and him simultaneously being in hospital. We have one sister who finds something out about her own identity, which causes her to reevaluate her life, and she's also dealing with her struggles with body image. We also have a teenage sister who is dealing with difficulties at school and is also a quite successful YouTube star. I wasn't sure about the representation of the latter. I was like, this doesn't really feel like a teenager to me. This kind of feels a little bit like a grown-up writing what they think a teenager is like, but then I realised that I don't know what teenagers are like either. Because I'm quite a few years away from teenageness now. Begin existential crisis. I thought all of the narrative voices in this book were really strong. I loved looking at the differences in the women's experiences depending on their age and the ways their relationship with their religious faith differed. Fantastic book, and I would highly recommend it. Going quite seamlessly into another book that has various different female perspectives, I read The Cows by Dawn O'Porter. I feel like I already knew I was going to love this book. This looks at the lives of 3 different women, Stella, Cam and Tara. They're all women in very different situations. We have Stella, who is dealing with the grief after the death of her mother and her sister, who were tragically lost to cancer, and what that means for her own health and attitude towards life. We have Cam, who is an incredibly successful blogger. She's extremely sex positive. I think she's either in her late 30s or she's like 40, and she has a 28-year-old boyfriend. She's very public about the fact that she doesn't want children, and that puts a strain on her relationship with her mother. And we have Tara, and I found Tara's story possibly the most interesting. Tara is a single mother who becomes publicly shamed, something that she does. Is it a spoiler to say what she does? But anyway, she does something that a lot of people don't approve of, and she becomes the subject of a lot of public scrutiny, and it completely alters her life. This book engages so openly with a number of taboos surrounding women's bodies and choice. It raises really interesting questions about our society, and it engages with feminism in a critical and productive way. It demonstrates that women can carry out their own personal feminism in a way that suits them, and no one way is better or worse than the other as long as it is championing choice and autonomy. This book is so fantastic, and I'm pretty sure it will make my top books of the year. It's definitely, spoiler alert, gonna be in my top books of the first half of the year. Another interesting female perspective, I read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. So this looks at I think it's like a 30-something-year-old woman named Eleanor. Eleanor is a really pleasant narrator to spend time with. She has such an interesting way of carrying herself and speaking. We're looking at Eleanor's attitude towards romantic relationships, her relationship with herself, and her incredibly difficult relationship with her mother. Gradually we learn little bits about her relationship with her mother until we are piecing together their history alongside Eleanor coming to terms with it. We know that Eleanor was taken into care when she was a child, but she does have some limited contact with her mother, and these sections of the novel where they are talking they're so uncomfortable because her mother is so manipulative and cruel. I thought this book was written fantastically. I thought the narrative voice was one of the strongest that I've read in a very long time. It is a really fantastic character study, and I would highly recommend it. This month I also read The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This is a book I've been meaning to get to for a really long time since a friend gifted it to me back in December. I'm pretty sure this is the first Neil Gaiman I've ever read as well. So in this book, a middle-aged man returns to his family home in order to attend a funeral. His house is long gone, but he is drawn to a farm and the pond at the end of it, which a girl who he once knew called Letty referred to as the ocean. When he sits here, memories begin to flood back to him, and he begins to understand his past and his relationship with this young girl. This book didn't leave much of an impact on me in terms of plot, but the writing style of it was fantastic, and I got along with that so well. This book was so easy to read, and I found myself just completely getting lost in it. Something I found a really interesting experience with this book as well is because it was given to me by someone and they said it was their favourite book. As I read it, I really saw things that made me understand why it was their favourite book in particular. So that was really, really interesting, and I would highly recommend doing that. Read your friends' favourite books. This month I also picked up a poetry collection, and that was Stubborn Lover by Christina Hopp. This is very short, it's only 21 poems, and the collection didn't leave a massive impact on me, so I would like to pick up another poetry collection before the end of the month. This book is about the fragility of human nature and the writer's own personal struggles. If you're into like what I deem kind of like Tumblr poetry, if you enjoy things like Milk and Honey, then I think you would really enjoy this one. And I don't really have much to say about it other than that, to be honest. I I also read 2 graphic novels. I read the first 2 volumes in the Miss Marvel series, No Normal and Generation Y. So this looks at Kamala Khan, who is a ordinary teenager. You know, she has to deal with the relationships that she has with her friends, with her parents. Again, another book where we are looking at a teenager engaging with their Muslim faith, what that means for them, what it means for their parents, and on top of that, she becomes Miss Marvel. She becomes a superhero. I think this is a really important comic book series, and if you are looking for something like that to pick up, then I would highly recommend this one. On the 26th of June, I took part in Lauren from Lauren and the Book's Cozy Reading Night, which was a special Harry Potter edition of Cozy Reading Night in order to commemorate the 20-year anniversary of the publication of The Philosopher's Stone. I wasn't in a great reading mood on that night, but I was definitely in a cozy mood. I had a takeaway, I had lots of tea, I had my bed, I had my fairy lights, and I decided to pick up something small, and I picked up Quidditch for the Ages by Kenilworthy Wisp by J.K. Rowling. This book is brilliant. I love this book. I read it quite a few years ago and thought I would pick it up again. This is just the history of Quidditch, and I love Quidditch. It's one of my favourite elements of the wizarding world. I just think it's absolutely fantastic, and to learn all about the history of the sport, development of the game, the development of the equipment that's used, the rules and regulations. Written really brilliantly as well, as you would expect, and if you are interested in the Harry Potter universe and you have not picked this one up yet, then what are you waiting for? The non-fiction book I read this month was Every Woman by Jess Phillips, and Jess Phillips is a Labour MP in the UK. I read this in the lead up to the general election in the UK, which went interestingly. I won't say much more other than interestingly. But this is about Jess's experiences as being a female MP, the struggles she has come up against, what she has campaigned and fought for. It has a lot of really interesting information about being an MP and especially being a female MP. Lots of things I didn't know and lots of really valuable pieces of information and statistics. I think Jess has researched what she's put in this book really well, and I think that comes through in the fact it's not all just research, it's not just sat at a computer research, it is lived research. I don't always agree with everything that Jess Phillips says, but I think she's an incredibly valuable voice in the UK Parliament. Her manner of speaking and presenting herself comes across really well in this book, and it was a really great non-fiction read. And the final book I have read so far this month is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I've never read any of Virginia Woolf's fiction before. I've read A Room of One's Own, and it was just something that I felt like I needed to tick off my list. It was about time. Something that I find quite interesting as well is that I've read quite a bit of Victorian fiction and a lot of postmodern fiction, but not modernism, which is squeezed in between. This book looks at one day in the life of a woman named Clarissa Dalloway, a high society woman in post-First World War England. It looks at her preparing a party, and it also looks at the trauma faced by another one of the characters, Septimus Warren Smith, who is a veteran of the First World War. This is written in a stream of consciousness style, which is something I don't always get on with in fiction. If it's something that you struggle with as well or think you would struggle with, I can highly recommend audiobooks as a good way of getting into that style of writing. Something that I did not expect with this book is how gay it is. It's beautiful. Like, I knew there was like stuff to do with ambiguity of sexuality in this book going into it, but I mean, it's not ambiguous. Like, she hella into girls. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, fantastic book, and if you have the time, I would recommend reading this in like 1 or 2 days. I understand because of the style it might be a bit much to read in a day, but I started reading this at the start of the month and I couldn't quite get into it because my reading time was very disjointed. I was picking up little bits here and there, whereas I've picked it up again and restarted it at the end of the month. I got on with it so much better. Great book. Highly recommend it. So they are all the books that I read in June. A much better reading month both in terms of quality and quantity. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Are there any of these that you're now interested in picking up? That's it for me for now, but I will talk to you guys in my next video. Also, I got a haircut, and you may see some videos where my hair is not cut. That's the magic of editing, not pre-filming.